This is Xbat, Shield AI's tail-sitting, vertical takeoff and landing fighter drone. Xbat is the brainchild of Shield AI's Armour Harris, who's very kindly joined us today. Armour, thank you so much for taking the time
my pleasure.
to talk to TWZ. Can I just ask you some top-line things about Xbat?
Sure.
What is this?
Yeah, Xbat is vertical takeoff and landing fighter and attack aircraft that's autonomous. You can think of it as the same size payload base as F-35, but goes twice as far as also vertical takeoff and landing.
How can you do that? How can this have the power and the size and the reach to go and do that kind of thing? What makes this possible?
Yeah, great question. So there's really three things that go in aircraft performance. There's the aerodynamics, there's the fuel burn, and there's the weights. So if you just look at the design of Xbat from an aerodynamic standpoint, it's designed with much higher L/D ratio or lift to drag ratio than most tactical aircraft. So that gives it pretty impressive cruise performance. Second thing is from fuel efficiency standpoint, because it's designed for vertical takeoff and landing, it has a bigger engine than normal for an aircraft of this size class, which means it wants to cruise pretty high and pretty fast, which is actually pretty efficient and is pretty far back on the throttle where we're in an optimal position for fuel burn. And the third thing is weight. So fundamentally, tail sitting is the most efficient way to do vertical takeoff and landing. The challenge has been, from a guidance, navigation, and control standpoint, difficult to pull off, which is why a lot of historical VTOL designs, like the F-35 or the Harrier, take off and land horizontally and then transition to forward flight. But that means you need big swiveling nozzles, you need a lift fan system. We delete all of that on Xbat, because we just have the simple straight down the middle F-16 style propulsion system. And then by taking off and landing from this articulating launch and recovery vehicle, that enables us to move a lot of systems from the air vehicle to the launch and recovery vehicle. For example, there's no landing gear on this aircraft. Landing gear traditionally pretty large and pretty heavy. There's no APU in the aircraft because we leverage a battery pack on the launch and recovery vehicle to start the engine. So by moving big systems to this, it helps you achieve a lot. And the other, obvious thing is no pilot, no life support system, which achieves savings over manned aircraft.
When it comes to actually powering this thing off the launcher here,
yeah.
I mean, you've chosen the GE F110 engine.
Yeah.
That's kind of a very fancy kind of nozzle in it, which actually is quite old technology.
It is, yeah.
That you're reapplying now. Can you just tell us how you control this on and off the launcher? And also, I guess you've got puffer ducts and things like that as well that are going to be able to control this. It's a very complex operation.
Yeah, great question. It's actually a lot simpler than it sounds. So we leverage afterburner power for takeoff. That gives us the thrust to weight needed to get this thing off the ground and up and away. It actually is only about 25 seconds from takeoff to when it's horizontal. So you actually don't use that much fuel on takeoff. You think about the takeoff run of a typical tactical jet, which is in full AB or on its takeoff run when it's carrying a lot of payload. Actually pretty similar. We leverage an axisymmetric thrust vectoring nozzle on the back that was originally developed by GE for a multi-axis thrust vectoring program that flew for a couple hundred hours on an F-16 back in the 90s. And that gives you pitch and yaw control when you're in hover. For roll control, we use bleed air extraction and route that to little jets on the wings and then just modulate that for bleed airflow.
At the top of this, I said this is your brainchild. You worked for SpaceX previously.
Yep.
Yeah, when we first look at this, we think this is quite an engineering challenge. You've been there already. Can you just tell us a little bit about how you can use your prior knowledge that translates into actually doing this?
Yeah, I was fortunate to have a wonderful career at SpaceX, starting with developing a lot of propulsion technology that went into launching and landing Falcon 9 rocket, and then moving on to leading Starlink satellite development, And then as a result of what we did with Starlink commercially, there was a spin-out program that we called Star Shield that I was fortunate to lead, which was delivering satellites for the US government.
You mentioned also about how this is going to go up and then transition. So presumably, being AI piloted, is this going to take off and land exactly the same way every time?
Yeah, you want it to take off and land exactly the same way every time and really minimize deviations from that, because then you get really good at that. It's designed for a pretty wide wind envelope, I'll say, right? So the difference between this and say something like Falcon 9 is Falcon 9, lands in a permissive environment in a carefully controlled set of conditions, and it follows more or less the same trajectory every time. While we generally want to follow the same trajectory when you get close in for launch and capture, this has to operate, in the desert. It has to operate, in the high north and the Arctic. It has to operate in high sea states. It has to operate in MCON conditions. It has to operate in GPS denied conditions, which is actually a lot of technology that we've developed on our smaller Vbat. And we're able to directly leverage here, because that's done tens of thousands of landings in exactly the same conditions.
You mentioned about the recovery. This is also an air-breathing vehicle as well, and it's going to come in and do this kind of Cobra maneuver as it comes in. The airflow, suffocation must be a consideration. How do you overcome that? Yeah,
that's a really insightful question. That's one of the trickiest bits about the whole design. So generally our development philosophy is identify the technical risks early and then design a series of tests to burn those technical risks down as quickly as possible. So inlet design and that VTOL transition was one of the things that we identified. And there was a lot of analysis that went into the design of the inlet on the front of this thing, because you're right, when you're transitioning from horizontal to vertical flight, you can't blank the inlet, and you have to keep the fan face of the engine within its distortion limits. So we developed a series of wind tunnel tests where across the whole transition range, all the alphas and betas that you're going to see and all the speeds that you're going to see ensured that our CFD was accurately predictive of what we saw in the wind tunnel. And we completed that whole series of testing. And then we've been also running testing on the ground with representative inlets on the test stand, to basically mitigate that whole transition phase.
And it was interesting what GE said yesterday in your media event, that actually the F-110 is actually quite stall resistant. And in fact, we've seen F-15s recently doing tail slides.
That's true. So there's a couple different variants of the F-110 engine. So the variant that we're using is the most stall resistant, variant of the engine for this application.
Xbat originally featured a cranked kite planform, which is visible in this testing footage. This has now given way to a straight leading edge with a more dramatic sweep as part of a distinctive arrowhead-shaped profile. Shield AI says the design improvements have been made based on Xbat test data that the company has accumulated.
Can I just ask you quickly about LO and IR signature reduction?
What we can say here is that Xbat is really designed to maximize cost per effect. So there's different levels of, I'll just generally say, LO technology, whether that's in the RF domain or the IR domain. And one strategy is you can have the most exquisitely low observable platform that you possibly can. That's something like the B-21. But the price point of those platforms is way up here, right? And you can only have so many of them. But you can also come to a different spot on the curve, which is how much LO do I need to actually achieve my mission? And what if instead of having one really exquisite thing, for that same price of that one really exquisite thing, what if I had 10, 15, or 20 of a slightly less exquisite thing, but achieves similar effect with mass? And if you just think about it, for the effect that you're trying to achieve and the price you have to pay to achieve that effect, the optimization puts you at a different point on the curve to actually garner the best cost per effect.
What sort of range are you looking to get out of this? I mean, how much fuel can it carry? And there's talk about maybe carrying external stores as well. Is that into that same equation?
1,000 nautical mile combat radius, and when we say combat radius, that includes time on station at max range. And then in terms of payload carriage, there's 2 internal payload bays. Each of those bays is the same size, they have 35. There's also an external hardpoint on either side. Those external hardpoints are wet plumbed so that you can put something like an air refueling store on those external hardpoints, and the Xbat could give gas to other manned fighters in the area or other drones in the area, for example.
Possibly got some ideas about it receiving gas as well?
Yeah, we're provisioning for the ability for it to receive gas, but one of the value propositions of Xbat is with its range and ability to base closer to the adversary than other platforms, you really want to be tanker independent with this and not need the cost of that whole tanker train to operate it. So I don't think it particularly makes sense for the way most customers want to use Xbat, but it's certainly possible.
Just to close, test plans. Where are you going? When are you this is going to fly by the end of the year, maybe?
Yep. So we're aiming to fly by the end of this year. We have a couple prototypes in production now in our Frisco, Texas facility. And we have a whole graduated test plan, designed because this is a VTOL aircraft. It does not have a horizontal landing capability. So the first time it takes off vertically, it also has to land vertically. So the test plan is basically designed, to start out, on the ground, testing horizontally, graduating to the aircraft tilted position vertically, and then the aircraft on a tether system, for safety, while we test all the different points in the trajectory while still held on the tether. You can imagine a large crane, one of the biggest cranes in the world actually, holding this thing so that we're safely on the tether while we test all the different test points, and then finally taking the tethers off and doing full free vertical takeoff and landing flights.
That's a big deal. I mean, this is a scale model. It's a lot bigger than this in reality, isn't it?
Yes, this is a 45% scale model. So the real thing is about twice this size.
This testing is going to be a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
Arma, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Jamie.